Welcome to warm, sunny Colorado. We're always sunny, always Colorado, as Charles Hoskinson always says. But today we're doing a live AMA in Colorado. We got Žiga, Branimir, we got Amos, and me, Guinness. And hey everybody, it's really cool to finally see each other. Žiga's way taller than I expected him to be. Branimir is pretty much what I expected, but I was a little surprised how tall Žiga was. So what's going on, guys? What's happening?
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for doing it.
Thank you for having us.
It's cool. So it's like a different country out here. It's very bizarre, but it's a great time. So, but yeah, so this is our first AMA of 2022. And we'll do
Right.
more of them.
And I think our very first in-person AMA ever.
Yeah, right.
Right.
We didn't get a ton of questions because it was kind of last minute. So I think what we're going to do is kind of just dig more into V6, and we're going to just kind of come up with a lot of stuff that we know the community is asking, and you know, some of the details, and go over the phases and stuff like that. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So we're going to be asking, even if it sounds very simple, we want to make sure that it's something everyone can digest. So I guess we can start off with maybe a little bit about the stages for V6. You know.
Yeah, I think the stages is a good start, because so we have 3 stages. We're in stage 1 right now, but I feel like we're in like the stages have stages. So we're kind of like in like stage 2 of stage 1 or something. Right. So can you speak a little bit about where we are in V6 as far as stage 1, and then what we can expect for like stage 2?
Sure. Yeah. So it's it's quite an undertaking, because we need to make sure that each layer of the protocol operates as it should, and because there's a lot of new things that are happening in V6. Things kind of need to be tried out in the setting of the testnet, and you need to make sure that you measure everything. So the stage 1 was really setting up this first network that has the data at the network layer. Then we found out some issues that we iterated on. Actually, the community helped a lot. I'm going to use this opportunity to say thanks to everybody who participated in the testnet so far.
Especially Calvin. Calvin's been a big user.
Calvin,
BRX, Dimitri.
BRX,
yeah, a couple of people that really contributed a lot, like in code as well. But essentially, what was amazing is we totally slammed the network in a good way, and we found some bottlenecks. Turns out some bottlenecks were not something that was designed by us. So we, for example, found this GraphDB thing. I'm sure you guys heard of it. It's a little bit stuff, with too many requests we made on it. But anyhow, it's getting pretty stable, and we're pretty much at the end of stage 1. So we're finalizing that, and we're gonna be introducing stage 2 with incentivization layer. So the incentivization layer is very interesting because, well, first of all, it doesn't make sense to introduce before we got the rest of the stuff stable. And then when that's stable, we're able to actually add all of the tokenomic stuff on top of it. So for this stage 1, you haven't even seen the trace tokens being used in that.
Right.
Incentivization is out. Therefore, that means no nodes are really incentivized to do anything. We're just being nice guys and testing.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Pounding a bunch of data and throwing it out there.
Right.
See what
Pretty
happens.
much, yeah. And the idea now is to introduce the test trace token. So we actually get this flow going end to end. So how this will work is actually going to be somewhat different from all the previous versions, improved actually in many ways. So there's several scalability improvements. For example, if you've been following on the technical side, the nodes that were being selected to hold certain data in previous versions would then have to do certain transactions to pay out tokens, right, and so on. And this stays the same. However, they were also being tested and potentially litigated to get, let's say, to verify that they host this data. And in that sense, this process is something we're upgrading into a version where it's no longer going to be kind of a litigation thing where you have this like checks, and then if your node doesn't respond, they're like bad node, naughty. But it's more like going to be a more on the other side of things, so more rewarding process. So whoever hosts it and in the right place in the network actually can submit proof, and that would be actually the same transaction as the payout. So all of a sudden we lower complexity. We have nodes do more meaningful work, and they also compete on basically on being more responsive or being in the right place in the network. So the incentivization layer actually is going to incentivize the new index of the DKGV6. And it's there's a lot of great things.
Let me interrupt here. When we spoke before a little bit, and this new I guess storing mechanism or a way of I guess, searching the network in a specific area, as you call it, neighborhoods. So this is what you're really talking about implementing in the second phase of.
Yes.
Right.
So essentially, neighborhoods are already implemented to an extent, but not to the extent that the nodes understand, all right, this is the, let's say, right neighborhood for me. And the way they know they are in the right neighborhood is because of technical characteristics that make things work much more efficient than before. For example, there's an algorithm for indexing that says, all right, that piece of data needs to go there, in that area, that neighborhood. And if a node hosts, another node might host that data that's not in that neighborhood, which is fine, but then they're not going to be, most likely they're not going to win in this, let's say, auction of being the sort of the best participant or particular neighborhood to actually host the data. So the network incentivizes data replication in a certain very useful way. And in that sense, it actually makes sense that even nodes might trade data. So you have something that might be more suitable for my node and vice versa. We just like exchange it, and then we have a higher likelihood of actually getting rewards. So all of this is what we're going to be introducing in stage 2. And we're going to be testing a bunch of these things. These are basically a couple of new smart contracts involved. And once we finalize that, we basically have a release candidate. That means we go to stage 3, which is this migration stage.
Migration onto
the
mainnet.
Yes, we're going to have, because right now, the thing is not fully complete. So you cannot say, okay, this is what we're migrating to. We need to finalize that in the stage 2, and then, all right, that migration, we have basically instructions on how to do it, and everybody does it.
I remember you and I talking months and months ago, and it was funny because I was like, wow, this sounds really complicated building V6. And you're like, well, oddly enough, it wasn't as complicated building V6 because it was designing the upgrade path to V6. And I don't know if any of us really truly understood what that meant. But now that we're here in phase 1, we can see that like it's almost kind of like we're just completely migrating to a new system. Like, right, and you got to make sure that's kind of seamless for the node operators. So do you envision that to be a seamless process where, as far as upgrades go, or are we going to be kind of like have to rebuild the nodes to some degree?
So it's probably going to be a semi-automated process. So it's not something like
click a button and go. No,
definitely
nothing's
like that. But we don't expect it to be like something where you have to spend like 6 hours to do it.
Right.
It's just going to be a set of instructions, what you need to do with the old data, what you need to do with what the upgraded node, how to transfer wallets, things like that. And basically we're gonna try it out. We're gonna do a couple of rehearsals, but I don't expect it to be it's not going to be like one button easy, but I don't expect it to be very hard. But just it's kind of a necessary thing we need to do.
So I do know that when we're moving from stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, mainnet, right now in the community we have what's his name, TR Let's Go. He constantly posts statistics each week on the OriginTrail network. We have 200 jobs a day, whatever. These are things that metrics people keep up with. So I know I was talking with Žiga, and we were really discussing the concept of jobs and what jobs are, and why you were thinking that maybe jobs, we want to move away from the concept of viewing things in the lens of just jobs. So did you want to talk more about what do you see as a better KPI or something that the community should actually be looking at, rather than just thinking, hey, we have 1,000 jobs or 500 jobs.
Meaningful statistics of growth of the network.
What does that mean to you guys now?
I mean, this way of measuring the success of the network is completely fine until the V5 stage. And even within the V5 stage, it's absolutely important to understand how sizable the network is, also in terms of the total graph size. Now with the V6, essentially we are transitioning onto whole other animals. So this is like going from a car onto the rocket. This rocket V6 is essentially going to bring enhanced tokenomics, essentially meaning that more trace will be put to work, not only because of the number of the jobs, or we rather say publishings, but also because of the number of the assets and the connectivity amongst assets. So all of these factors are going to contribute to the success of the network, on top of the already existing networks, metrics such as the total graph size. And Branimir spoke yesterday very much into detail as to how assets are going to be created on the V6 network, and we expect that the total market for all possible assets that you can put on the total on the decentralized knowledge graph is insanely huge. And there is one concept which ties into the kind of the new or enhanced tokenomics, which is staking on the assets.
It's funny you said that because the new V6 site went live yesterday, right? And me and Amos have already got 20 different people that saw that one piece about the staking. The more you stake, the more like the ability to have the whole data. So I know that's what you're getting into. I just wanted to explain to people that. I think that's why we were very excited and curious about this. And I know you're going on that, but
yeah. So V5 and all the predecessor versions of OriginTrail were essentially designed for, I would say, quite compelling use cases. Many of them you saw them already in deployment. Many of them are still coming. The partners are working on like incredibly useful things on top of the decentralized knowledge graph. Also, one thing worthy of mentioning is that one of the European consortia also kind of advanced the initial idea of just having OriginTrail as one participant within this whole stack of technologies that are going to be advancing the self-sovereign, I guess, biased technology within the European Union towards having OriginTrail as a core infrastructure next to the original infrastructures that were kind of designed really for this consortium. And we came in later, but after the consortium saw how much more advanced the DKG is, they are already planning to include it for any kind of future company who will enter this open call opportunity. And we're talking about on-chain here, to also be using OriginTrail DKG even at the application stage. So this is just one of the examples how much already V5 is expanded in terms of the use cases that it can support.
So you just said on-chain using the DKG applications.
Yeah, we saw in one of the presentations that this is going to be one of the core fundamentals for technologies for the on-chain in the future. And there are so many other, of course, consortia and other also private opportunities or private company opportunities that OriginTrail is seizing already, and most surely it will continue to do so in the future. And the V6 essentially introduces a whole new spectrum of the potential use cases, which tie back to the concept of the asset and the assets that can be made discoverable via OriginTrail DKG. And essentially, this is for the first time ever going to be an opportunity for any asset, be it NFT or a digital representation of real world physical asset, to be discoverable across the internet. And discoverability is very important because discoverability also drives value. Your asset is only as valuable as the number of the eyeballs that are essentially seeing or want to see it. And we saw that this is also an opportunity to enhance tokenomics and hence the staking mechanism that is going to be built into the V6, whereby a particular asset, if there is a certain motivation behind it, can be made more visible, much like akin to PageRank, and Branimir also went into detail.
Like SEO, but at a different level.
Yeah, and we know that like humanity have always been developing in the direction of having more information available, and we are at the point as a humanity that we have too much information available, a lot of noise essentially.
All data, what is it? 90% of data was made in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Yes.
And essentially, we see once DKG is fully deployed and once it gains critical adoption, that DKG is going to be the vehicle for attention. So you're going to be there are going to be ways for you to essentially gain attention in this quickly expanding Web3 or metaverse and any other concept that will be built upon the existing concepts. And Trace essentially is going to be the vehicle for you to make your assets more visible. And of course, there are several reasons why you want to do that. Some assets, you might not want to make all the assets discoverable and visible, but typically, if you want to be,
if you want to get it out there,
if you want to get it out there,
make sure that people have to see it, then you want to make sure that you're promoting it.
Yeah. So essentially, V5 and predecessor versions versus V6 is a whole another animal. And then going back to your question, number of jobs. Total graph size, some of the metrics will remain relevant. Total graph size for sure, because we measure network effects with the total graph size. Whereas publishings are I mean, jobs or the publishing, so that which we believe is a better word, are going to be essential. But then, of course, you have some other tokenomics mechanisms that deserve extra metrics to be followed.
Okay.
And staking brings, of course, staking introduces this necessity to thoroughly rethink the way you measure things.
Okay.
So do we see the staking, is it safe to say that phase one is probably the most difficult part of the test phase, and then it gets a little easier in phase two when the synthesization model comes out? How long after V6 should we expect where people can actually start staking? Is it like maybe 6.1, or is it out the gate with 6.0? I think just people, it's been a big question a lot of people were asking, so.
Good question, and well, there's going to be several ways to stake. So for several things you can stake trace for. So some of them will be available right away, some of them will be available a little later. That's the thing. But basically, staking on your node and having the ability to delegate stake to a node is something that's coming. Well, 6.0. That's what we're targeting with. And then second phase, we're looking at keyword discoverability search, what Žiga mentioned. So the idea is that you can do basically Google AdSense, right? You go, I believe it's AdSense. You go and pay for your website to go up.
Yeah.
This, right? Well, that's in that sense keyword staking. That's going to come a little later. But
that's like, I think from a community perspective, I think they're willing to wait for something like that versus how can they use their track today like, easily. So that's awesome. And so it sounds like it's gonna be pretty quick.
Yeah, that's it's on the way. So definitely that one is but you have to prioritize some things and not everything.
Right.
And the more things you stuff into one release, the longer it takes to do that release and the more complex. So that's why we have stages. So first, like you said, the first stage is the hardest because it's like you're literally laying the foundation, and then it's easy to like lay bricks on top of that. That's nice. Well, if you don't do the foundation right, then whatever you do on top of it is kind of
shaky.
It's going to be a mess, yeah. So we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that what we have built as a foundation is solid, and then we can throw a bunch of rocks at it. It doesn't do anything.
Actually, piggybacking off that conversation, we know that one of the primary issues, one of the first things we discovered when spamming the network was that GraphDB would, they would just basically pass out, it would knock out. So we had that conversation where you spoke about BlazeGraph and how it has, I guess, more of a safety mechanism that allows the nodes to really work at a safer pace. So and that's all within stage one, by the way. So this is us getting positive results out of our stage one testing.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
can you talk a little bit more about what took place there with GraphDB and?
Sure. I mean, so the thing is, so zooming out completely, every system has some sort of limits, right? And the GraphDB in its free version, which everybody is using, right, has certain limits. It has a little less limits if you go with the commercial version.
It's like MySQL versus paying for SQL. Like
sure.
Yeah. I just for lack of a better example.
Probably, yeah, but more amplified.
Right.
And the thing is, so there's some limits that have been designed, but there's also, you could say, some limits that you might reach where the system just doesn't behave correctly. And we kind of gave GraphDB a really hard time. It's not to say that we are, that the technology is not good, but it's just the point is that it couldn't handle, all this, and then the node would, try to restart it, but then as soon as you try restarting something, and like you kind of set this failover mechanism as your default, that's not what you want to do. We want to have a failover for emergency things.
Right.
So we actually designed a test, and just one step back. For everybody to know that the idea is not to pick one best database or one best component. Actually, I spoke about that yesterday too. So we have the idea is that in every single layer of the implementation, you can actually ideally pick what you want to use. So, you pick this graph database, you pick that SQL, or maybe you want to do
pretty dynamic
Postgres or something. The thing is that ideally we design the system so it doesn't favor, so it's according to this principle of neutrality that we've been following since the beginning. And the idea there is that now we added BlazeGraph and we've designed the test. Basically, the test is, how many transactions can it take in a second, and we sort of turned the dial off really hard, and we saw that it was like at least 10 times more capable of GraphDB free version. Reasons are also BlazeGraph is, I mean, it's an open source unlimited thing. The only downside of BlazeGraph is that it is a project that was bought by Amazon, and itself it's not continued. So they're not
Kiss of death.
they're not, yeah, basically they're not updating it, which is not to say that it doesn't work. You know, it works pretty well. It powers Wikidata. It powers basically this huge tremendous
TCP/IP hasn't been updated in 20 years, 30 years. So I mean, it's right. It's so valuable.
The point here is that we don't have the network, let's say, breaking, because there's one component everybody uses, and that component is breaking. So now we're going to have, this is initial 2, but then we're going to expand to support more and more. And now once you do 2, adding the third one is easy. That was just like with blockchain. So once when the system can handle more than one, then it can handle quickly, additional ones. So, and because it's all based on a standard, we're all talking about RDF here, Sparkle. If we take something that's built on standards, it can quickly plug in. So therefore, you will see in the roadmap, check, you'll see compatibility with Amazon Neptune, which is basically BlazeGraph. Almost. Okay. You'll see Stardog, you'll see other solutions like that, which the idea is that you can one day maybe decide, all right, I want to buy whatever, this particular online database hosted somewhere and connect my node to it, and that be my node store. And that's something that we had requests for, actually, by the businesses. So
I was just about to ask that.
Yeah, I was really going there.
That's the thing. So, I mean, ideally, you kind of kill multiple birds with one stone.
Right.
But having that said, right now, the biggest thing that we want to kickstart is the telemetry. So the telemetry bounty, where we're able to.
Which, to be clear, is stage 1. That's like closing off stage 1.
Yeah, basically closing off stage 1.
1.
And when we have that, we have the ability to. So we monitor a lot of stuff already. What we actually learned, and that's part of why it's taking a bit to start this, is that there's so much data coming. Everybody's like publishing crazy, which is amazing.
That's awesome.
That it's actually hard for telemetry systems to analyze this. If you want to draw a graph of average publishing time over the last 24 hours, and there's been like 1 million publishing comments. Right. It's not easy for Grafana, for example.
Can't keep up
this query. So we had to completely reiterate on the design of how the telemetry server actually handles all of this data, how it queries it from the DKG and so on. Because we realized 2 weeks in, we'll probably just like we would get stuck because of the amount of data.
Okay.
And so it's really great. And in that sense, when we have that, we're going to be all together. We're going to be able to look at these live metrics, and we'll see after each release. Maybe some number goes down, which is good. For example, we have release 1.24, and we see average publishing time drops by 20%. Awesome. Sure, we've done a good job. Or vice versa, but it's an objective metric. It's not. So it gives us exactly where things are going on, and that's why we found a couple of things just by measuring time, where we see, okay, this should not be lasting that long. This is like, it might be 100 milliseconds, but we expect like 6. So immediately are able to tackle it. And it's something really awesome coming with release 6, because before that, we didn't have this level of granularity of monitoring. So we literally went into every single command in the node, and we introduced measurements for literally every duration you can measure. So that's going to be really useful, not visible yet so much, but I'm excited when you guys get to see the telemetry going. Well, that will be really, really awesome for node runners.
And speaking of speed, and I was talking to Žiga about this the other day, but a lot of things that keep coming up are about the Explorer, right? They say the Explorer on the website, what I think a lot of people forget, it was kind of like just something put together to at least do what it's meant to do. It wasn't meant to be fast or anything of that degree. And then you look at the BSI stuff, and it's so fast, like you click a button and it validates everything. And so going forward, do you see a lot of improvements in Explorer? And we talk about Google, like, being like a Google, people expect to type something in, it returns like Google. So do you see the Explorer getting to that point at some point where it will be that easy and fluid?
Yeah, essentially concurrently with the V6 development, especially when the phase 2 starts, we're also going to see an introduction of the first kind of version of new Explorer for the future OriginTrail versions. And we have already actually done quite a lot of experimentation. You remember the supercharger, we also demonstrated the way the supercharger works. And most likely the new Explorer is going to introduce domain-specific features, meaning that it's not only going to be intended for enterprises, but most likely for certain quickly expanding niches from the get-go, starting with NFTs.
So end user can retail people.
Yes, yes, anybody can use the Explorer to really gain value from it. And going back to the metrics, perhaps one thing important in the future is going to be how many people or how many queries are gonna be happening on the OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph. And this is tying into the success of the Explorer. That's why Explorer is going to be we are going to be developing this Explorer through several iterations, and we can already consider Supercharger to be one of the iterations that are going to be essentially plugged into the next version of the DKG, already starting with the one of the test phases. And this is going to give like people a lot of imagination as to how they can really use OriginTrail and essentially see it as a Google for Web3, what it was originally intended to be. And it was very interesting to follow people's reactions yesterday to Branimir's presentation. And
question. Just checking the question.
Yeah. So essentially, what we're trying to do here is to build Google the right way for Web3. This is the mission that we're on. And starting with V6, this is the basis that is going to allow for anybody to essentially use OriginTrail through the Explorer as a Google. And this not only introduces assets such as NFTs and other digital representation of assets, but other open data. OriginTrail is going to be interoperable with Google Knowledge Graph, and this is where also the certain magic is going to happen. Certain cross-pollinating effects are going to be happening between the Web2 technologies and the Web3 technologies, such as OriginTrail. And there was another question we got yesterday at the presentation. Actually, Branimir got it. Are you building against or with Web2? And essentially, OriginTrail is interoperating with existing systems, including the systems built by the likes of Google. And this is also one of the reasons why we believe OriginTrail stands a better chance than just building everything from scratch, because you're building upon the foundation, which is arguably very strong, but needs a lot of tweaks so that we build a better internet that's going to be based on data self-sovereignty, that is going to essentially leverage this powerful movement of assets. And here in Denver, you see like plenty of people, although perhaps the markets are a little bit depressed, but builders are here, the artists are here, and this is a powerful movement. Perhaps one of the most powerful movements we have seen, not only within the internet era, but generally in human history.
It's funny you say that, because I literally bought my first NFT yesterday. We were talking to a developer who was building platforms. I said, oh, I have some Ethereum sitting around a wallet. So this ETHDenver is really like NFT Denver. Like everything
pretty
is
much
focused on NFTs. Like, you notice that? That's
like
everything. So you can see where the power of like the supercharger stuff comes in. And when Branimir was talking yesterday, all the nerds like eyes were lighting up when we were showing like the supercharged demo. And I was actually a little surprised that that's what they were so intrigued by. And so it really shows that the end user retail stuff is going to be pretty massive in this space. And it really it's going to be beneficial for not just enterprises, but now as we've seen that for all your common plebs out there, they're going to be using this.
And I mean, I really must say, I think from what I've seen so far, the NFT space has really opened up an easy path for education on a knowledge graph. Like, it's been probably one of the most effective tools at getting people to understand the impact of a knowledge graph. It's because they use it every day, they're aware of it, they know where it's weak.
Right.
So by them knowing where it's weak today, and you just show them how we can fix that issue. It was just so easy for people to just, oh yeah, I know I need a knowledge graph. So I was just really nice to see the kind of reception you guys were getting from that particular, presenting on the supercharger. So I wanted to ask one thing about the staking, right? I just want to get a little bit off the, I guess. Circle back, we're circling. By the way, guys,
it's hard for us to read questions, by the way, because this setup is really weird. So I'm sorry if you're putting a question in. It's not very easy for us to.
We're just going with the flow.
Yeah.
So with the staking, there was a mention that with staking, you're gonna, I guess, increase your likelihood of obtaining, of course, we're moving more away from jobs, but for now, for today's sake, you're gonna be higher likely to obtain a job within a specific neighborhood. if you have that stake. So some people already reached out, oh my God, it's a whale game. Oh my God, it's only whales, you know, so.
The guy with the million track is gonna get all the jobs. That's what people thought.
Right. So can you talk a little bit more about, I guess, the weighted randomness to the network, or, you know, just explain that it's not a whales game. It's still an open, decentralized network.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a little stupid to design it to be able to say because it wouldn't work.
No.
That's the concept of neighborhoods. Well, we're talking about them exactly because this is what works at scale. So, so if you take, we're not inventing the wheel here. This is something that has been used in multiple, basically distributed systems. So you have this concept of having a lot of machines, and you have to somehow meaningfully split some work between them. And in order to do that meaningfully, you have to know what the work is, right? And because we're not doing blockchain and proof of work, and everybody's sort of mining
At the same time, trying to.
without actually any useful work being done, except being just like throwing the dice, and whoever gets it first, they win some tokens, which is great. I'm not saying blockchain is bad, but like ideally we use this work for something useful, right? So here in the network, we have the situation of, if you might have seen, we have these indexing and querying protocols that come first, and then we have data exchange protocols that come after. And then these indexing protocols basically mean you have to somehow sensibly organize information. So how do you do that? In one system, that's easy. Use a database, the database indexes that for you. This is a done deal. It's just a matter of how much you can fit in that database or that computer, hardware and so on. In a distributed system like we have, specifically decentralized system, which distributed systems usually have some sort of control. Like for example, Netflix in the background has a distributed system of computers that serve your video, but they're all controlled by Netflix. So it's a centralized system, but it has a lot of machines, right? And then when I watch a video in Serbia, they probably stream from some server.
Your local ISP
somewhere close, it's not streaming from that, right? But the point here is that we're indexing something across the network, and that means certain data should land in certain positions in the network in order for it to actually be able to aggregate. So we don't throw like, some data at your node and then some other data to your node, and then, everything kind of gets scattered. That's actually against the point.
Yeah.
So you can observe it as sort of these gravity wells for data. And this comes primary. So staking comes secondary. Staking is like, okay, you're in this neighborhood, and then you're able to increase the chances of receiving a certain reward by actually being more committed in the network, being more vested in the network. So that let's say your node has been working for a while, and then there's a newcomer node that in this neighborhood, for some, let's say, calculation metric is a little better than your node.
Millisecond response time, uptime availability, that type of stuff.
Yeah, but also the thing is that it's not the same type of that type of metrics are important, but here it's more of this so-called data distance or sort distance.
Yeah.
And the idea here is that with stake, you're able to increase your chances within certain neighborhoods that you might get selected. But these chances are not like, somebody stacks a bunch of trace in one node, and all of a sudden this node gets everything.
Right?
No, this is actually the formula by which this is being calculated is being designed so that this doesn't break this initial first layer of neighborhood functionality, which if we break that, we might as well have no staking. It doesn't, the system work. Right. So this is going to be the factor of this has to be much less. And then finally, there's one more factor that's going to be part of it. So I call it the greediness of your node, because now your node is going to be submitting proofs that it hosts certain data, and it's also going to be submitting a certain, let's say, amount of compensation that it's happy with. If you're greedy and you're asking for too much, there's going to be somebody else in the market, just as any other market, that says, "Hey, I'll do the same thing. I'm even closer than you maybe in this network, or I have a little less stake, but I'm going to be a little less costly.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do it." And then it's kind of it's a better market mechanism where you have the ability to tune your node in such a way that you actually get a better performance out of it. But in the end, it all is rooted in basically physics. That's why I say these gravity wells, where we're using these systems that basically, if we don't do that, as the network grows, the system won't work well. It just will get stuck at some point.
And so I have to ask, because the community would kill us if we didn't even touch upon this. But so when we get back to things like Lambda, right? In V6, Lambda kind of changes drastically, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of the big worries people have today are people undercutting, and then they undercut that person, undercut that person. So what is Lambda going to look like at V6? We even call it Lambda still, and this automated market maker, I don't know what you technically want to call it, but how do you see that working in V6, and how is it different than what we have today?
Yeah, so it's going to be, there's going to be a difference, but the concept will remain pretty much the same. And the deal is that it's always going to be a market mechanism. This market mechanism means that, well, we have supply and demand, right? And then the supply is, let's say, the amount of nodes they're competing. And if we have too many nodes at some point, you know, it's like basically too much resources in the market,
Oversaturated.
then the price can go down. And that's something that, you know, that if the market is able to sense, so the demand, right, can try and, you know, do a lower price. On the other hand, if it goes the other way around, also if there's like not enough supply and too much demand, the price icon, blockchain, the price needs to go up. It's very simple. And the idea of designing such a system is that we actually enable such a market to be efficient. Ideally efficient so that your node recognizes what's going on by itself. You don't have to do anything, but like it tweaks some parameters, Lambda, maybe something else too, according to what it observes. And because everything is public, it can observe pretty much anything.
Right.
So that here is the point, but it's also about not creating so going back to that previous story of neighborhoods, that means not all nodes are equal for a specific task.
Gotcha.
So for some tasks, some nodes are better, and they're going to be a little more favored. So
Interesting point. Yes.
It gives it a level playing field where you can compete in this area, don't have to compete in this area, and still be a valuable asset to the network.
But that's the point here is that basically it's random, completely random, because all of these areas, these neighborhoods in the network, actually they're called partitions, but I don't like to use that word because it sounds like old school. Something is cut out and it's partitioned. It's not partitioned. It's really just a neighborhood. The idea of these neighborhoods is that for every single keyword, they get calculated differently. So it's completely random. Basically, like hashing produces a random value from something you put in, literally the same thing. It comes down to hashing. It defines, all right, this is a point around which the neighborhood is going to be eligible for this. And I mean, you can also be outside of that neighborhood, but the likelihood of you getting, you know, to be part of this is much less, and it's much less useful for the system because system might, if you go far enough, might not be able to find it.
Right.
You know, by querying or actually querying the index, doing a search. Imagine that all wrong nodes had some data, which could be, let's say, if the state would be too big of a factor, then we could have a situation where your search doesn't work because the search is looking here and the data is here.
Which is why you were saying you see value for some node holders to even trade data sets to see you can align more with your neighborhood.
So maybe as an illustration, you have a network of X nodes and the network grows 2 times, let's say 2X. And all of a sudden neighborhoods change. So there's double the nodes in your neighborhood for something that you have been hosting data for. And it turns out that, well, there's, let's say, 2 nodes, arbitrarily chosen nodes are going to have, after some time, some neighborhoods that they see that they might actually better compete if they exchange.
Right.
So let's say you and I have a node, and after some time, I have some data, but I see that your factor for that data, it's actually called contribution factor, is like 10 times bigger than mine. So my node can immediately say, hey, dude, let me send you this if you can send me something of similar nature so that I can have a higher. So in that way, we're incentivizing nodes to behave well so that even if that situation happens, you have something should be in this area, but it's in this area, that it sort of by itself over time.
The network itself heals.
Self-healing.
Kind of, yeah, it's like
And that's always been a core part of the network.
Right.
Always self-healing capability.
Right.
Yeah, that's the point. And the idea here is that, you know, over time, over time, it's not like a win-lose scenario. It's a scenario where you have nodes cooperating, and then in that sense, also being able to maximize the efficiency of the market.
Right.
That's kind of the idea.
And so, kind of skipping around again a little bit. So you guys have been doing a lot of work with Acala, like you close with Acala, and their parachain's now live. And a lot of people keep asking about the parachain thing. And parachains, you know, they're only. It's worth it when it makes sense, right? And it might not make sense the second, but it might make sense maybe a few months from now. Is there anything you can talk about as far as the
the goal for the parachain and what to expect over maybe the next 2 quarters or so?
Yeah, I think it's the parachain thing as it relates to OriginTrail is going to intensify pretty much soon, especially when the V6 as the deployment matures. And the main goal here is to essentially also enhance the existing value propositions of the DKG. And parachain is not an integral part of the DKG. It's an add-on piece that can essentially exist and also helps other parachains. It can even help other projects which are not deployed on Polkadot yet. So it's a very, I would say, kind of a pivotal point that essentially also allows us to unleash certain network effects that are also possible otherwise without parachain, but with parachain, we see it as like a memento worth harvesting, because it's the community is here. We also were essentially invited to this place to talk about DKG by Web3 Foundation to show what's going on, and we also have a few individuals from the Polkadot ecosystem which are strongly supporting us, the team, in deploying the parachain. And we have been testing the parachain. The test part, or at least the technical part, has pretty much matured. And now is the time to find the right bandwidth, because you cannot deploy both V6 and parachain. These are two kind of very, I would say, important building blocks, and just implementing both at the same time will not make sense.
Yeah, exactly.
You cannot even communicate the importance of both. And parachain as an add-on is absolutely important. And the goal here is also to enhance the economics of trace and also incentivize the use of trace by having parachain deployed. And essentially everybody that will have been involved in the OriginTrail as a node runner and kind of positively contributing to the growth of the DKG from DC or DTH perspective is also going to be essentially entitled to somehow be incentivized by then and in the future. And the possibilities that the parachain is going to bring in addition to DKG are endless. Also and this is perhaps also one important point, the parachain makes sense for us as other parachains are deployed, so that the potential for market effects is there.
Right.
And now we have seen that by the time the next, I would say, batch opens up, most likely the current batch of 10 parachains is going to be live. So we're going to have a very easy way to connect and essentially harvest network effects.
Because you exponentially increase with every parachain that came before you. So
Yeah.
like it's instant growth by 10x or whatever, there's 10 parachains or something. I'm just giving a rough example. So
And we're also following closely some projects. We follow them more, the others less. And Acala is a very good example, because we are working very closely with them and seeing when we can, even in the midst of the development of V6, start doing something more tangible. But then, of course, also having our eyes open as to towards when exactly is the right moment to jump onto the parachain train. And we have gotten a lot of invitation to do that sooner rather than later. But it's always
I'm
better
inviting you to do that sooner rather than later.
But there is always like the best time to do such thing, and a very good time is coming.
It has to make sense.
Yeah,
The process, this is process needs. And you guys have known hanging out with me the last 2 days. I'm a nut for processes, and I don't like
people. He is.
So yeah, no, I totally understand. There's steps involved in this. You gotta
and we have garnered a lot of support in the previous year, not only within the Polkadot ecosystem. The OriginTrail, the whole community saw support from a couple of important exchanges. This also meant that like hundreds of thousands of people have come in contact, or like they're now holding trace.
Well, even the Coinbase custody news that came out today, it's a little thing sometimes people don't realize, but the Coinbase custody solution now means that you can have large institutions, large players come in and safely buy into the ecosystem now. I mean, you're not relying on to use KuCoin and open up their ledger or something like that,
So it's becoming very, very, I would say anybody wanting to become part of the OriginTrail ecosystem now has a red carpet treatment.
Yeah.
And just imagine where we were in the beginning of the previous year as opposed to now. And now is really a good time to expand and to also add additional components to the OriginTrail DKG. And within the next few months, I think we're going to see a lot of very interesting movements, a lot of great upgrades, also in terms of the parachain that is most likely going to come. We cannot say when exactly, because we cannot even know when exactly the next batches are going to be on, but our suspicion is, expectations are that it's going to be, that's going to happen pretty soon.
Okay.
And when we say soon, we also mean that like we have like V6 happening now, and for us, time is moving very, very quickly.
Going too fast.
Going too fast.
I think you said two powerful statements that resonated with me today. The first one being querying as a core KPI. Like right now, we're all just focused on the publishing aspect, you know, but it's so important. Just how many people want to see stuff here, you know? Yeah, that is an important metric to even like, yeah, that's something we should have even been facilitating since the beginning. And of course, also understanding that this whole scope and breadth of OriginTrail is not tied to the parachain. V6 itself is our own magnificent innovation that will bring so much interest from parachains, but we also saw that smart agri-hubs, which is not related to crypto, they are also going to be working in the system, and you spoke a little bit about that on the dev call. So I guess from either of you, you could talk a little bit more technical, you could talk a little bit more to like the business side and corporations with smart agri-hubs. Are they in particularly looking at V6, or do they just focus on their integration from the knowledge graph perspective? Like, are they anticipating V6 from their, you know, workings? Like, how is that working?
Yeah, I think smart agri-hubs and other, like I would say, previous initiatives and the ones that are on, you know, in action right now are already serviced to a good extent by V5. And V6 essentially is about the new things, empowering individuals, empowering masses to start using the DKG. But you're right that they are looking into this direction, and smart agri-hubs, as well as a couple of other initiatives, are initiatives that we have been part of for the last 3 years, and that's also a very important point. Essentially, OriginTrail has been developed since V1 to V5 in close collaboration with companies, with consortia, and thus we have validated all the components that we have developed by now, by V5.
Right.
And now with V6, I guess validation is also going to be done in collaboration with partners, through channel partnerships, through deployments that we most probably are not going to have direct contact with, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, we're working with companies that have offices or exposure in 100 plus countries, and it makes more sense to have them think about potential deployment, or which brand, which business customer would use
this is
DKG.
gold, I must say.
And in addition to that,
yeah,
V6 is essentially opening up a whole area of new opportunities where we are going to be interfacing much more than we have so far with retail users or individuals. And this is very important, because this is where iteration can happen at a much more dense spectrum than so far, because you have like people using it, and then you go back to the drawing board, design something new, better, and Explorer being one such application, which we really are excited about.
Yeah,
and it's going to show essentially to everybody how capable the DKG is. It is already capable now, but it's only apparent to the business users, which is also fine. But you know, there's a
whole
also
different world.
tremendous potential. And also mentioning the exchanges and the support that the token is getting. I mean, now we see much more people have gotten to know OriginTrail. Yet there's still a huge potential, but nevertheless, many people now have a red carpet treatment, and they can get involved. And
there's an easy avenue now to get
into. And we're also building ways to also somehow activate or tap into the existing potentials that have not yet been tapped into. There are so many geographical areas where OriginTrail is not yet present as much as we would like it to be. America, I mean, North American part is very much represented.
That one's done.
That one's done. We're doing pretty good here. We're also doing quite good in Europe. Going towards Southern America and Asia. This is where, like I would say, one of the biggest potential lies. And we're going to have to figure out ways how to perhaps even adapt the language, so how to perhaps translate certain pieces, so that we get we get CEO optimization also in that part of the world, Russia as well.
It's a sensitive subject right now. Bigger things to worry about than track tokens. But
yeah, so the bottom line is a lot of potentials, and you mentioned smart agri hubs, important initiatives, but right now we're seeing also so many other things, and we believe that we're very good at enterprise adoption, and the track record does show that. And now we're trying to focus to the areas where the potential has not yet been harvested. And the good thing is we know where those potentials are.
Right.
And when we talk about visibility, it's a little bit of a segue here. We've had things like OT Hub for a while, right? And it's been what some people will call, their light in a dark place. It like opened up, it made it more visual what's going on. And we talked about where we're going to see these, the growth and everything. So are there going to be tools where not only node runners, but just your regular retail people can at least see the growth that's happening? Are we be able to monitor the network more than that? I mean, I go back to remember Houston, Houston was always kind of that thing, like it seemed cool, but it just never quite did exactly what you were hoping for. Do we see some better ways that people are going to be able to gauge the metrics of the network, or maybe like something, a better OT Hub, but on crack or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, the first installment of this is going to be the telemetry. We call it the telemetry hub, actually.
Yeah.
And it's
so that is like your name for it. I just want to make sure people understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a clone of OT Hub.
No,
it's a bit of a different thing. It measures all of those, like I said, performance metrics of the network that nodes are submitting actually to the network. So I'm really proud of how we designed this test actually, because we can overload the network and we overload it with useful data that then helps us analyze how that overload went, and then we circle around again. So it's really cool. We kind of killed two birds with one stone. So that's kind of the first set of the first interface where you'll be able to see such metrics. But then obviously we're going to be looking at what other types of extensions to that are interesting to show, because definitely we need to have the ability to visualize the useful metrics for everybody to see. Also for node runners, since we are looking into a bit of a different type of a node, it's going to be that Houston topic is a little bit of a different thing now. It's going to be possible to actually manage without necessarily just jumping into the configuration file, which is that cumbersome thing. So it's not going to be as easy as going and doing the search in Explorer, but it's going to be something which has a little better, let's say, interface into, and therefore making it easier for everybody to.
You don't have to be a Linux developer to use it.
Yeah. It's a thing that, I mean, we know there's a lot of room for improvement all over the place, but you kind of have to focus your energy on what's the most, let's say, important in a certain moment. And right now it's finishing the stage one. And so that's, then we go into its utilization, where we get everything right there. We don't really have room to mess up there. It's tokens, smart contracts, you don't want to get hacked or something.
Yeah, those you don't want to take lightly usually.
And then after that, user interfaces, these things, that's something that's like, that goes easy. You just have to, sit down and do it, and obviously do it with some feedback, so you don't do it alone in lab, but actually, and that's also what I'm personally really proud of, is that right now I think we're engaging the most people ever with the technology to help contribute, to help build it together. It's happening via this telemetry bounty, via the contributions bounty. All of a sudden, just yesterday, I found out we have a community member, I think Dean is his name, who created a Java client, which is an amazing thing. And by the way, we'll probably be rolling out a Java DKG client,
nice.
Java based. So we're looking, what we've been asked for is for a Python client, for a Go client, for a Rust client. There's a need for a PHP client. So there's like a bunch of this stuff that needs to be built, which are basically copies of the same thing in a different language. And by the way, really good ideas for those who want to contribute to the bounty. If you're a developer and if you are not sure what you want to build to help out and earn some bounty tokens, this is the best thing you can do.
So what's the best way to start getting involved? Just go to GitHub and respond.
Explore the DKG client, explore the new library, which we actually just launched yesterday, called Semantic Web3, which is a front-end library for the DKG. See how it works in JavaScript and basically clone it into Go. And if you clone it in Go, it passes all the checks on GitHub, code reviews, it goes through the comments by the core developers and the community, that's it. You're eligible for bounty, and it's going to be useful for everybody. For example, we have projects in the on-chain project we mentioned that some of them are going to be using DKG as it is right now, and some of them have told us, we're going to be using it, but we would really need a Go client. And I was like, okay,
I see.
it's very easy to know what to prioritize because we have feedback from people. So these are just some examples, and I think that's what I'm saying. I'm really proud that right now it's such a big wave moving and pushing things, and seeing things just pop out. And somebody's been working on days for making this Java plan, which is amazing. So the more we do this, the faster everything's going to get. So it's going to be really awesome, and therefore we need tools to make sure that we cooperate well, that we measure that we've done a good job on the network, and it's going to be awesome.
I think that what you guys gave the community, as I said, is gold, because most of the times we're in the community just sitting there, and I think you guys are in like this dark room, like drawing up rituals on the wall, like like V6, like we don't really know like how are you guys building and what questions are being asked of you guys from enterprises. So to hear like Smart Argue Hubs may have a particular take, or this company may have, okay, we'll use this version but not that version, and one person wants a Go client. Like these are things we would not in a million years really doesn't know. Right. So I think it's great just to see that, and also important for the community to understand that deadlines aren't just on you guys. Like you don't just decide a particular deadline for something per se. Like it's really it's shaped by in collaboration with all of your partner network and all of the members before things have to reach their certain level of maturity. So I think that's really good that you guys did that for the community. I wanted to ask one question here though. I want to leave the person anonymous because it's a little bit of a controversial question, but it has to be asked every time, without doubt, without fail, or else we get shot.
It isn't when exchange, right?
No.
That one now.
I was going to ask when Moon, but I got that one. So this one is more so about the expectations for publishings after V6 launch. Now, we know what we're working on today, and we know that we should not expect that you guys know that, oh, every week you're going to get 1,000 jobs, or every week you're going to get 2,000 publishings, or every day or whatever. But can you guys speak to, at least, is there an expectancy for an increased network activity post V6 or whatever initiatives you guys have?
The floodgates
that
we always talk about, that we use that term.
Right.
You want to take that one? Or should I take it?
I mean, you don't have to answer. You don't have to.
So yeah, it's so maybe I can start like this. Žiga mentioned we've been really good at enterprise adoption, but like not exploring avenues where a common user person can come and just like publish something on DKG. If you want to do that now, I'm not happy with the process, but it's not that easy to do. Like as a setup ago, basically. Yeah. So that means enterprises, like they found their way to do it, but like it's kind of like a valve on the floodgate, right? Mm-hmm. So think of the capability of providing anybody the super easy 2-click ability of publishing to the DKG, and what you can expect from that. Like I cannot tell you the numbers, but I expect those numbers to be bigger.
Right, at least by theory.
And I mean by theory, but also if you offer a compelling enough set of information and set of things you can do, like for example through the Explorer, then I expect to see a lot of activity. For example, in the NFT community, if you're able to extend your NFT with a certain capabilities for something, if you're able to make it more discoverable, then that immediately creates demand for publishing more data into the DKG. And that's so think of the way I see it is like I mentioned Tesla yesterday. I mentioned it today. It's Niagara Falls big electricity power station, right? It's like you taming this whole waterfall, right? And then before that, like there was no energy generated there, right? But then when you build it, you don't like put the whole thing, like it starts small and then you open up the valve, right? Or the gates, whatever the word is. So in that sense, there's all these people here building stuff and getting, into all this opportunity space in Web3. Yes. And it's something that I believe is going to be like, it's going to fit perfectly to the new improved capabilities of V6, because then all of a sudden, like, if you had 0.01% of capability of market served by some technology which matured enough so that you can now give it to anybody, I don't know how it cannot we cannot see significant growth. And that's what we're working for. We're not working for keeping the levels at where we are now. We were working for making sure this technology, first of all, is useful to companies, and we prove that. Second of all, that it works well, that it passes all the technical checks. I cannot tell you how much time I've spent speaking with people from companies like BSI, Swiss Railway Company. You know, the Swiss people, they're very precise and immaculate. And it's been hoops and when, you know, jumps all over the place to go through, which I believe very few, if any, other crypto team has went through. And I'm really proud of this. So once you do this, then you're ready. Okay, we can now start bringing this to the masses.
Right. And what I thought was interesting, this is the weirdest thing, by the way. Me and Branimir were actually, and Amos were having a beer last night, and this woman came up and said, she kind of just started talking. She goes, you know, I'd love if there was something that would like take pictures of all my agricultural stuff and it can put all the data together, and then I can get statistics from that. I'm like, did someone pay this woman to come over and say this? But it just goes to show that there is a lot of uses that you don't realize because you're not around. Like, so when you hear stuff like the smart agri hubs and stuff like that, you're like, oh, it sounds pretty realistic. And like NFTs, there's a lot of demand for these types of tools out there. And it's interesting. It's like, and
that's a valid point.
Very surprising.
We were there, we were talking. She comes up, she says she's a gardener, you remember? And she starts talking about honing all that data. And then I say, do you know what a Kakaxi device is?
She literally named, like, she described Kakaxi.
What Kakaxi is, right?
Kakaxi or something.
Right, so like, it shows that these products, we see smart agri hubs, but we don't really know the true impact that these things will have. And this is just a person that randomly walked up and she's trying to get that solution. Like, so it's really important. Yeah, that's a good point.
It was funny. It was like, it was interesting. It was eye-opening. It was, wow, this isn't, you're not just, and I'm not saying we're just building it fun, but like you have somebody coming up to you telling you there's a need for this at a conference
randomly
in Denver, Colorado. You know, it was interesting.
And that's a gardener.
A gardener.
Yeah.
So the enterprise developer.
Weirdest thing. Yeah. Yes. Right.
Yeah.
So.
I did want to ask one more question though. So in terms of time phases, because I don't know if we.
It's like 90 degrees in here right now, by the way. I'm sweating like crazy. So let's wrap. Well, say
so
one more.
Maybe we could wrap it up.
Yeah,
I kind of just wanted to wrap it up and give people also an avenue for the bounty. I think that there's a lot of I don't think people understand. I think people want to, of course, get the most value out of the bounty, so they don't know in which way to contribute to do that. So do you guys have any plan to like really something that's, oh no, I like, okay, telemetry data gets like this portion of a bounty and we can split that or whatever, or is it just, you know, based on the value you guys, because only you guys can really tell how much value a particular input has had on the DKG from, because you have all the building.
We don't want to just keep uploading movie data.
Right, you know, like, so, like we want to be able to literally really be able to help and also, of course, participate in that juicy bounty. So what can we do to make sure we're bringing the most bang for our buck? Like, what can we do?
It's a really good question. So I'll try to summarize. So there's two ways to get bounty, right? And one is running nodes and not coding. The other one is, well, coding, and then you can do both, basically. Ideally, you do both. For example, you run your node and you see a bug, and then you create a solution as an issue on GitHub or a PR on GitHub. Dude, that's awesome. That's like a contribution. So anyhow, there's going to be two scoreboards for both of these. You don't really mix them because how can you compare, like, how you can compare the worth of, let's say, you coding a feature and you submitting a month of data. Right. How, you know, it's not, we still don't have that mechanism, but it's a fun thing to look into. But anyhow, there's going to be two scoreboards, and then based on the amount of activity on all the boards, well, basically we're that's going to be the input for how much bounty goes towards which participant.
Interesting.
In terms of what's going to be scored, so on the telemetry side, we're going to be looking basically the amount of data is going to matter. So if you turn your node for 1 day and somebody has it for 10 days, well, they're going to be higher on the scoreboard because, well, they contributed more, right? But it's not just about the quantity, it's also about the quality. Now, when I say the quality, I mean specifically quality of telemetry data for now, because we are collecting that on the network. We're not necessarily thinking, you can submit movie data, it's okay, but this telemetry system won't recognize, we won't see the difference between that and some.
Right, so
Right,
don't do
okay.
stuff that's gonna be useless.
Okay.
So we're gonna, that's not to say it's gonna be useless, because you might try, because you're trying something totally different, you might stress the system in some unusual way, and that will create some new, different telemetry data.
Yeah.
Because whatever the point there being is, the more you use the node, the more you query something, the more you publish, the more you do searches, the more whatever, the more useful it is, and the less automated, like, publish every second, the higher you'll be on the score. That's basically it. So there's an algorithm that's gonna basically crunch on most likely a daily level, because there's so much data coming in, we cannot have this be real time calculated and scored. Most likely will be refreshed every day. We'll see scores based on different operations, different activities, different measurements. If you send more unusual data than others, that's going to be let's say better, right? And then on the other side, on GitHub contributions, so the more, let's say, the more impactful things are features like building a whole new client, that's like a complete thing. But that's not to say that solving a bug is not worth it. Contributing to documentation, super worth it, especially from, sometimes it's even better that people from the community do this than people from the team, because we live this 24/7.
If they can make it community readable, which
Right,
seems like something
exactly.
that's easy for everybody, maybe it's not.
Yeah, for us, not only that, but for us, this is also common language. So sometimes we speak about maybe some crazy technical term, and it doesn't speak to other people at all. So like that's why, for example, Milian helped us a lot when we were building this documentation. Shout out to Milian, because he was there. He was like, you immediately see, I would never write it like this, because it's a human on the other side.
Not a machine like you.
So it's the thing there is that this contribution is also will help. So if we can build up, you don't even have to be a coder. Go over to GitHub, you can just edit the documentation and provide suggestions. This will be also part of the bounty. Everything that helps is essentially eligible for bounty. There's only a certain level of quality that's required, so we cannot like have a patch, let's say for OT node, that's like some shitty code. I have to say, I'm sorry, shitty code.
We're all family.
You cannot go in there. So we're gonna basically, that also generates work for us in terms of reviewing, but also having somebody else review from the community is beneficial. And that's, so we're going to be counting these, basically how much you contributed in terms of code, how much you contributed in terms of review, discussion, ideas, open an issue on a GitHub. Let's say you're using the DKG client. DKG client is a very new thing.
Yeah.
And it's something we built with the knowledge within the team, mostly from all the things we got together.
Right.
But like, if I throw it today at 100 NFT developers, I'm sure there's 20 of them are going to come back and be like,
this isn't doing this, or
this could be a little better, but if it will just like a little bit shifted this way, And this feedback is amazing. So if anybody tries to do that, something on the node, and suggest something useful, and it goes through a discussion through the community, and I emphasize this, through the community. Ideally, it's us as core developers, we see ourselves as part of the technical community as well.
Right.
So all of you guys like contribute in there. We're gonna calculate all of that. It's very easy to get out of GitHub, and we're just gonna put it on scoreboard. And the more active we are, the better everything's gonna look. So it's so maximizing the value means really maximizing the value for the project.
Right.
We won't be rewarding some, again, shitty code just because somebody thought, okay, I submit this, okay, that's about it. No, you won't.
Right.
Gotta be valued.
Fair enough.
If it's work, it needs to be valuable. If it's valuable, you're getting bounty. That's simple as that. And it's not that hard to create something valuable, especially if you follow the project, if you know what it's about, and if you can explain some things even better, that's right. So that works.
Okay.
Well, we're getting close to beer 30. And this room is really hot. Like I'm sweating like crazy right now. But this has been awesome, guys.
It really has.
And Charles Hodgkinson, if you're watching, it's not warm out here. I don't know what you keep saying about it's warm and sunny in Colorado. But hey, guys, I want to thank you a lot. And this has been awesome to come here and hang out with you guys. And it's great to finally do it in person. I'm just staring at a screen. So
Yeah, it's been fun. We should do this one more time. Someplace else, someplace
A little
warmer.
warmer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Europe, good food.
Yeah.
I
My
like,
wife
I
will
like,
come, then she's all about it. We'll be over on a plane.
I like Denver, but the only critique I have is the food.
Right.
Food is really not good.
Giga really doesn't like the breakfast in the United States, so I have to see what a European breakfast is like. But
You're welcome to visit. I'm gonna serve you the best breakfast there is.
great. All right, guys.
He's very picky. He's like, he lives on a farm.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Actually, that's a fair point.
We all have
That's
farm
a
fresh
fair
eggs
point.
every day.
That's a fair point.
For him,
You
farm
should visit
farm to
Charles.
fork means like 3 feet, you know, it's all like, farm to fork is very long way. So, yeah, it's been great. And by the way, if anybody's in ETHDenver, we're around, for the next couple of days, come see us, guys. We're totally up for chatting, having a beer or whatever.
Yep. All right.
Awesome.
Well, take care.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.